Good morning. This is Catie Egan reporting for the Hofstra Morning Wake-Up Call on behalf of WRHU. Today in our studios, we have local author and Hofstra alum MJ Flood to talk to us about his first published work titled, Where Are You? Finding Myself in My Greatest Loss. His book was published just this past August and is now available both electronically and in text. Mike, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. So first I'll have you introduce yourself so our listeners can know who they're talking to.
So as you said, I am MJ Flood, the author of Where Are You? My name is Mike to just about everybody, except for my mother, who calls me Michael. I am a teacher. I've taught at a Long Island Catholic high school for 20 years. I am a lifelong Long Island resident. Summer before last, that would be 2018, I spent several weeks thinking about and writing this book. When I'd come to, I don't know if you'd call it a crisis point, but that kind of a point in my life where I said, something's not working right, and I need to clear out my thoughts a little bit. And when my thoughts became clear, I realized that loss was a determining factor in my moods or in my emotional life. And in order to clear a path for thought and mental wellness, I needed to sort some things out. And it was suggested to me by a friend and a colleague, why don't you write your thoughts down? In retrospect, I realize now that he really just meant like, do a journal, bounce some ideas around. And I ended up writing about loss in my life and where I'm finding myself and how I feel it affected me. And I gave him some of what I wrote. And he said, wow. He says, I think you can publish this. And I said, all right, well, that's not something I don't want to do. So I refined it and dressed it up a little bit and thought, if this is going to be a book that people can read, how can I lay it out? How can I tell the story? And as I started writing it in a strange way, I felt more hopeful. As I started writing it, it was like it was helping me as I was writing it. And I said, that is something I've known my whole life, that writing can help me, but I don't know if I ever really experienced it, And I felt that I could see things more clearly. As I started to recollect the losses in my life and recount moments of healing, things that did help me along the way, I started to see oh, wow, this is really coming clear to me, not just for a book, but in my own mind, and my own heart. And when I finished, I said, I would say that was probably May to through July, maybe 8 weeks that I thought, outlined, drafted. And I said, okay, I think that's it. I spent a few more months revising, bouncing it around to some people that I thought could read it and should read it and make some comments. And then in probably February of 2019, a publisher accepted the manuscript. Wow. And we were in business.
Awesome. So that May to July page, was that all just the pre-writing phase where you were showing it to some of your close friends?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's pre-writing is funny. I'm a teacher and I teach kids how to write, and pre-writing is like a 45-minute exercise. But in fact, in this experience for me, pre-writing is maybe 25 years worth of thinking. And I'm a thinker. I think a lot. I keep track of my thoughts, So when it was time to start outlining my ideas and drafting, I had a list of 30 or 40 different things I wanted to, a lot of them memories, things that I wanted to talk about. Some of them as far back as my childhood and moments where I realized loss, grief, sadness, depression, anxiety, all of these things are a very close-knit family, and they all have to do with one another. And as I started to map out these ideas and experiences in my life, these memories in my life, and I started to write them down, I said, well, that's pre-writing. Your life is pre-writing.
Right. So you actually jumped right into my next question. You were talking about 25 years of just having these thoughts and this pre-writing phase. So give us a little background about yourself as an author. How did you ultimately get your start?
This book is my start. I mean, I guess that I've always enjoyed writing.
Okay.
Even as a little boy, just writing little stories and stuff. I've always loved reading. I've read my whole life. My older brother, who I talk about a little bit in the book, was a great influence for my writing and my reading. He encouraged me to write. He would read my silly little preteen, teenage stories. And he passed away when I was 24. When I was 17, he was 24. He passed away. Like I said, I talk about him a little bit in the book. He's definitely a big part of why I have always in my mind thought I could write. He told me, Mike, you could write, you could write, you could write. Other people have said so. but I was a slacker in high school, so I didn't do anything involved in it. People asked me to do the newspaper. I said, oh, no, no. People told me to do the literary magazine. Oh, no, I better not. Even in college, professors said, wow, you write well. You should write for the school paper. You should write. And I said, oh, yeah, no. And now in my early 40s, somebody finally said, you should write. And
you decided to
I
go
just
through
did
with
it. Yeah, I did it. Yeah, right.
So you do have the new book you mentioned out now, Where Are You? Finding Myself in My Greatest Loss. And the book dives into, like you were saying, the process of grieving and ultimately finding peace and healing. But give us a little more detail about the book. Where did you ultimately find the inspiration to write your story?
That's a great question. I have personal, emotional inspirations, and I have literary inspirations. So we'll do the second thing first, like writers that influenced me. Lots of writers have influenced me, sentence arrangements, pacing, style, word choices, things like that. All of that, lots of authors have influenced me, and that's not necessarily important. But one book, it is called Grief is the Thing with Feathers. And that's an allusion to an Emily Dickinson poem, I think. It was wild. All right.
Yeah.
It was, and I don't want to say too much about it, except that it was a great, great book. And I said, this is the way to write about grief, because it was chaotic, and it was without rules. It was this. The author clearly said, I am going to write the way grief feels. And I said, I think I could do that too.
So you talked about emotional inspiration as well. What was that emotional inspiration?
My wife, she and I endured this loss together. We lost our baby, Sophia Michelle. She was stillborn, 28 weeks, December 5th, 2008. It's just, you endure something like that as a couple, and you don't really know how you get by day sometimes until you realize that love is how you get by, you just love each other, and then you have kids. Thankfully, we have kids, and that doesn't happen to everybody who has a loss like this, know. But my daughters, I got two little girls. We have two girls at home, and they're awesome, and they show you what's important and things like that. I think they are part of my inspiration to get right, think clearly, be honest with myself, be honest with sadness and anger and all that nonsense. It's like sadness is a real thing, and anger is the jerk friend that follows it along.
Of course.
So I, when I look at my daughters and my wife, and I'm saying, wow, I'm angry, and they can maybe see it if I lose my temper or I'm impatient or whatever. I snap at somebody, come on, let's get in the car.
Yeah.
I'm not angry. I'm sad.
Okay.
And if I don't deal with my sadness, I look like a jerk. And so I think that emotional inspiration is from a place of love and wanting to be a caring person, and thinking about our lost baby in a different way, where anger is easy, but love, really. I mean, she's my baby, so I thought about her in a different way, I hope. And that's really what I got to try and direct myself, to think about the world in a caring way and not with the bitterness of loss.
That's such an interesting take on what you were saying before. I'm going to go back to, do you think that sadness and anger always go hand in hand?
Well, some people don't get angry.
Right.
And that's an unfortunate truth. Some people can feel sad and cry and be emotional and not be able to focus on their tasks and things like that. They can be sad, but they don't get angry. So, no, they don't always go hand in hand. However, I do think anger always, for me personally, yes, but I do think anger is always a byproduct of sadness. I think that anger is one way sadness can manifest itself in a person's emotional life.
So going back onto something you were saying before, you were talking about your two daughters now, and I was reading online that Sophia passed 10 years prior to your book's release.
That's right.
Was there a reason you waited to write the story? Was it something too difficult to write at first?
Well, I would say that, yes, it is difficult to write about. 1. 2, I have always wanted to be a writer, and I always thought I was going to write some novel or something like that. And then to all of a sudden one day say, I think I want to write about my baby, it makes you feel bad, like, am I using this?
Okay.
So there's a certain, I don't know, there was a feeling of, is this what I have to write about? you know? There is, and these are things I do talk about in the book, but there is certainly an amount of guilt and shame with child loss like this. And it's complicated because I feel guilty or I feel embarrassed that we couldn't do it, you know? And now I'm going to write a book about it where I'm going to publish this book where everyone's going to read the thing that makes me feel terrible about myself.
Right.
That's kind of a
vulnerable thing.
Yeah, vulnerability without a doubt. All right. So getting over that vulnerability is part of, you know, getting my mind straight. But vulnerability is, that's a big deal, especially for guys.
Yeah.
You know,
We're expected not to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I expect not to be. You know, this is not. I can deal with this. You know,
Right.
that's really your first thing. You know, that's like your first line of defense as a guy. I can deal with this, or the second line of defense is I have to deal with this for her. You know, so to reveal all of these vulnerabilities in this book is I don't know if this is such a good idea. So there's a lot of things like that. But also, and really, maybe this is the biggest one. This was a conversation that my wife and I had to have. You know, this is not just my story, you know. And that's not an easy conversation to have because you heal in different ways and at different speeds. And if I'm ready to tell a story, it doesn't mean she is. And this was a conversation we had to have. I gave her the manuscript, and she held it for a long time before she even really read it. And she held it for a long time. And, you know, it's like, I don't know, if I ask her to, do any number of things I ask her to do. But, you know, things at home that I might ask, you might ask a spouse to do, and it doesn't happen for weeks. It's an easy thing to fight about, you know? But this was like, I really want to know what she thinks. I really want to know what she thinks, but she wasn't reading it, and I didn't want to nag her. She finally read it, and I went into our bedroom. She was reading. I could see she was reading it. I didn't say anything. And, you know, we were getting ready for bed or whatever it was, and she just kind of put it down. I could see she was at the end, and she just put it down, and she looked at me. She's like, "It's good." I was like, "Oh, thank you, God."
Is that when you received her support?
That's her support, and I gave her the dedication, so she.
There you go.
Right. So that's the process. You know, that was the decision, and you can see that's a lot of baggage type stuff. You know, you got to get out of the way before something like this can actually happen.
Yeah, of course. So you're talking about vulnerability before. Do you find in general, as a writer, is it hard to be vulnerable, or is it something that in the end it helps you?
In the end, it helps you. It is difficult to be vulnerable because you really have to tap into some feelings that you probably push away most of the time. But once I realized that, wow, this is a gold mine. This is when I started getting vulnerable and realizing that I'm really getting in. It started to flow, and I could write sometimes in ways that were less than traditional, or I felt that, yes, this worked. What I just did worked because I was being honest. I mean, vulnerability is honesty.
Of course.
Right? So if you're honest, it's probably going to work.
And what a brave thing for you to be able to do, to take your own personal grief and share it with your audience. It's something very special that I don't think a lot of people would be able to do. I was reading blurbs and reviews about the book online, and one quote really struck out to me. It said, "MJ Flood walks the reader through the chaos of death in search of the place of healing." Was your goal while writing not only to tell your own story, but also to help others who may be going through a similar process or grieving in general?
Well, I think that's an understanding I've come to over the past few years. Again, these are some things that I talk about, but a few years ago, a friend of mine, actually the bereavement counselor, asked if I would speak about grief and infant loss at an annual memorial service. And I agreed to do so. And it was clearly, I said, this is something I want to do because I got to just tell this story, you know, I got to tell people how I'm feeling and what this has been like for me. But afterwards, you know, these people are coming up to me, and that day alone, how many people said, "You should write a book." Oh my God, thank you. And then people are thanking me. You know, like the chaplain at the hospital came up and said, "That was incredible," you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." And, you know, and once that started, you know, and I did it again after that, another memorial service, and people started saying thank you. And I said, okay, maybe it's not just me. But
Right.
realizing that was a critical point to feeling better about things. And by no means does this mean the sadness goes away or anything like that. I still feel heartbroken, you know. I wish you were here. That's it, you know. But no doubt, as I started to realize other people are involved in this journey, that was important.
And I think, especially with Mental Health Awareness Month Day passing, I think a lot of readers will be able to relate to aspects of the story you tell. And all the reviews online are very positive.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope so. And this is the conflicting sort of, I don't know, the conflict I'm having is on the one hand, I want to say, it doesn't matter. I wrote this story. This is my little girl's legacy. It's out. It's forever, or for as long as the publisher will continue printing it. Yeah. It's out. That's it. That was the goal. But now that I am getting positive feedback, I'm saying, no, I do want more people to read it. If people are receiving it and kind of telling me the things they're telling me, yeah, I do want more people. So that's why I'm on this radio show and hoping to reach as many people as I can.
Of course, and I hope it does because it sounds like an incredible story.
Thank you.
So I was really curious about the title of the book. When you start off the title saying, "Where are you?" who are you ultimately addressing?
That is a good question. And I talk about this. I do write about it because it's something I say to myself. It's almost like it's like I don't know what you'd call it, but it's like a mechanism. Where are you? Where are you? What are you doing? Whether it's thoughts I get wrapped up in, or I get lost sometimes. Literally lost, and say, all right, where are you now? And so I say it to myself. But after we lost the baby, I found myself saying it to myself. Really. I'd see a bird and I'd think of my little baby, because my wife and I, when Sophia was in the womb, we called her little birdie. And you'd see a bird fly by and I'd say, oh, where are you? And I knew she's not here. I know that, but I do want to know, where are you? I could say she's in heaven, she's with the angels and saints. I could say all these things, but I needed her to somehow be more local or physical, where are you? Where can you be? Where can I find you? Those kinds of things, Those are all the thoughts that went through my head. And I was thinking about Where Are You as the title. And I was at church one day, and the priest is reading the gospel, and or one of the readings, I guess it's an Old Testament reading, whatever it was. And I was not paying attention. And and all of a sudden, I just heard the priest say, "Where are you?" Me? It was almost like he was talking to me, It was the person doing the reading anyway. And it ends up, it was the story, it's from the Adam and Eve story. And Adam and Eve, ate the apple or whatever. And God comes down and says, "Where are you?" And that was a story. And I said, okay, that's a message. I hear you loud and clear. That's the title of the book. And that's it. So it's a running theme in the book. Where are you? And it manifests in lots of different ways. And I kind of posit the question in different ways and approach it from different angles. The idea of where are you? Where are people? Where am I? It's got a lot of different angles to it.
And when you say, "Where am I?" is that kind of where you were in your whole process of grieving, coming to healing? Or how does that work when it applies to yourself?
Well, I think that the answer to the question, where are you, when I apply it to myself, the answer is different now than it was 5 years ago, 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. The answer is different. Here needs to be the answer. Where am I? Here. I need to be here. And that's maybe sometimes not where I am, So it's about, centering myself somehow, reminding myself of the love in my life, my family, my work. I've got a good job, I've got a good family, I've got people that love me, I've written a book now, and I say, I'm here. If I am here, I'll be all right, know? And I think that that's being present, really. It's amazing that I'm a pretty involved dad. I'm a pretty passionate teacher, but that doesn't mean I'm always present. Just because I'm there doesn't mean I'm present. So thinking in these ways over the last few years and writing this book, while I fail to be so sometimes, allowed me to focus more clearly on being present.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people could relate to, no matter their level of grief, just being more present. I think we're always worried about the past or worried about the future, and just being present nowadays is something I think all of us need to work on.
No doubt.
Well, we're just about wrapped up today,
Great.
But before we go, tell our listeners, Mike, where can they find your book?
Where Are You? Finding Myself in My Greatest Loss by MJ Flood is on Amazon.
Awesome.
They can buy it in, as you said, digital or paperback. I think it's $10 digital and $15 paperback.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for coming on to the show today and talking with us. We really appreciated it.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah, you had so much to offer. We really loved having you.
Thank you so much.
For the Hofstra Morning Wake Up Call, on behalf of WRHU, I'm Catie Egan.